On the Friday preceding Thanksgiving, I found myself immersed in clearing the backlog of tasks on my desk. Determined to complete everything by day's end, I envisioned a well-deserved break in the following week, capitalizing on the upcoming holidays for a 9-day hiatus. My agenda? Pure relaxation, lounging, indulging in football, and savoring turkey sandwiches without any disruptions. Most folks know me as Don, though my mother insists on using my full name, Donald, which I've never been fond of. Donnie is a name I detest, thanks to its association with my ex-girlfriend, Janice, whose betrayal still stings. Her pleading voice, begging for explanations, only serves as a bitter reminder of her infidelity. Janice's deceit prompted me to reassess myself. I realized I'd allowed her to manipulate me, elevating her to an undeserved pedestal. I morphed into someone I wasn't, altering my appearance and social circle to fit her expectations. Yet, despite her criticisms of my kindness, I remained loyal to my friends, believing in the ethos of reciprocity without holding debts over their heads. As the clock struck 5, signaling the end of a frenetic workday, I joined my friends at the nearby pub, craving the solace of a cold beer. Amidst billiards and banter, Candy, a saleswoman from another department, approached me with her trademark charm, igniting a familiar spark of unease. Candy, a striking figure with model-like elegance, exuded confidence and charisma. Despite her allure, she remained unattainable, her romantic interests lying elsewhere. Yet, her professional prowess was undeniable, consistently excelling in her role and positioning herself as a frontrunner for a higher-ranking position. "Hey Don, can I steal you away for a moment?" Her sultry voice piqued my interest, hinting at a conversation that promised intrigue. "Oh great, here comes the sales pitch." "Sure, Candy. What can I get you to drink?" "A beer, please," she said, flashing a smile as she settled beside me. Not exactly what I expected. I would have bet on Chardonnay or Merlot. I placed the order and redirected my attention to our impending conversation. "So, what's on your mind?" I inquired. "I have a dilemma, and I was hoping you could assist." Her confidence waned slightly. "I need, well, a boyfriend, really." Her voice trailed off. "All right, what's the punchline? Is this a prank? Am I on candid camera or something?" I scanned the room, half expecting hidden cameras. "No joke, Don. My parents are visiting next week for Thanksgiving, and they expect to meet my significant other." I caught on quickly. "And you led them to believe you're in a relationship with a man?" She avoided eye contact, her discomfort palpable. "Why not just dress Vivian up as a guy?" I suggested, dripping with sarcasm. "Cut it out, Don. This isn't funny. If my dad found out about me, it would devastate him." "He'd have a heart attack," she confessed. "Candy, this sounds like a sitcom gone wrong. I'm envisioning vintage I Love Lucy episodes. Unless your parents are completely clueless, this won't fly. Why not just tell them the truth?" "Trust me, honesty is the best policy," I advised. I just can't," she stuttered. Tears welled in her eyes. "Fantastic, I was caught in a snow job, feeling like the Eskimo from earlier. Sometimes I wish I could shed tears like women do. I'd stroll into a car dealership and sob until they handed me a brand new Mercedes. If I agree, and I emphasize if, you owe me a favor." "Anything, Don." "I'd be immensely grateful," her smile returned. "I want turkey. Lots of it. And absolutely no giblets in the gravy. Can't stand them." Her face lit up, perhaps expecting more, something truly repulsive to her, like demanding intimacy with a man. "You won't regret it, Dawn, I promise," she said, planting a kiss on my forehead. "I seriously doubt that." "I'm already regretting it," I muttered to myself. As she hurried away, I called after her, and no marshmallows on the yams either. She waved back, disappearing through the door. "What's that word?" "It's right on the tip of my tongue." "And oh, that's it. That's what I should have said. Well, there goes my hope for a peaceful, lazy week off. That turkey better be worth it, damn it." The next morning, I battled through a hangover-induced haze. I'm not one to get plastered, but after Candy's visit, Well, you know how it goes. The reality of the mess I was in started to sink in. Bells chiming incessantly. God, make them stop, please. I groaned, sitting up. It was the doorbell. Who in the world could be ruining my day at this ungodly hour? It wasn't even noon yet. Candy? What on earth are you doing here? There she stood on my doorstep, 4 oversized suitcases in tow. Are you going to invite me in? She asked, a hint of impatience in her voice. I stood there in my underwear, squinting against the light, trying to process the situation. It was too much effort. I left the door ajar and trudged back to my bedroom, scratching my head. Dawn, sorry to bother you. Where do you keep the cleaning supplies? Candy's voice whispered from the hallway. In the kitchen sink, I grumbled. 15 minutes later, Dawn, do you have a broom? Pantry, I muttered. 5 minutes after that, dustpan? By the entertainment center. 2 minutes passed, Windex? In the wall safe, behind the Rembrandt. It was clear that peace was a distant dream. I dragged myself to the bathroom, rummaged through old prescription bottles, and found some Vicodin the dentist had prescribed. I popped 2 pills. 15 minutes later, I was mowing the lawn, blasting my iPod, and grinning like a fool. The absurdity of doing yard work in November amused me. That's Southern California for you. We'll probably have another green Christmas. Trouble was brewing, though. Less than a day after talking to Candy, I found myself grappling with a drug and alcohol problem. But hey, at least my yard looked immaculate. It seemed Candy had arrived early to whip things into Mommy clean for her parents' visit. I'm no slob, but a bachelor's version of clean doesn't quite match up. Judging by the size and number of bags she brought, it looked like Candy was settling in for the long haul. Candy had been industrious. The house looked like someone else's abode. By then, the hangover had faded, and the drugs had worn off. I strolled into the kitchen for a bottle of water. Candy was bent over, scrubbing the refrigerator, her perfect behind on display in those short shorts. Oh Lord, what did I do to deserve this? A cold shower was in order, that much was certain. I needed to get Candy out of my head. Without the water, I retreated to my bedroom. Damn, I'd been invaded, all her stuff was in there. We needed to have a chat about boundaries after my shower. First, I had a problem to take care of. The water was icy, but my body was freezing, yet my manhood remained as stubborn as ever. I switched tactics and cranked the tap to hot. Might as well be comfortable while I dealt with this. I'd barely lathered up when I heard her voice. Dawn, I'm heading to the store. Need anything while I'm out? She called from the doorway. Her silhouette was faint against the shower's opaque glass. My mind raced with inappropriate responses, but I bit my tongue. No, I'm good, I replied instead. Mind if I grab some new curtains for the kitchen? Those ones you have now, not great, she continued. She asked. That was the difference. Janice would have just gone ahead without a second thought. Sure, go ahead, I said, not minding at all. Oh, by the way, you've got a cute butt, she giggled. Not as cute as yours, I thought to myself. For the next few minutes, I mentally chastised myself for my inappropriate thoughts about Candy. I gave Don Jr. a good talking to, twice. It was going to be a challenging week, to say the least. I felt guilty about objectifying Candy like that. She wasn't some fantasy to ogle over. But damn, she had an effect on me. I resolved to be more mindful around her. When she returned from the store, her face was flushed, like she'd been crying. Was she a mind reader too? What's wrong? Did I do something? I asked, genuinely concerned. No, Dawn, it's nothing you did, she reassured me. Are you sure? I scanned her face for any signs of distress. It's Vivian, she confessed before breaking down into tears. Should I comfort her? Run away? We weren't exactly close friends, but I couldn't just leave her. So, I held her like a good friend would, stroking her hair until her tears subsided. She looked up at me. I went back to my apartment, and Vivian was in bed with another woman. Damn her. I mean, it wasn't serious between us, but... Her sobs interrupted her words. The house felt heavy with silence that night. Candy's ordeal brought up a lot of unresolved feelings about Janice. I tried to lift her spirits, but it was hard when I felt so low myself. I retired early, not because I was tired, but because the loneliness crept in. In the darkness, I empathized with Candy's pain. "Dawn, are you awake?" she whispered. "Yeah, come in," I replied softly. "I know I've already asked a lot, but since most of my stuff is here already, could I stay until I find a new place?" "Just a few days," she requested. I didn't need to answer. I reached out my hand, and she took it. I pulled her close, wrapping her in my embrace. There were no words needed as she drifted off to sleep in my arms. Sleeping with such an enchanting presence nearby was a challenge. Her soft skin and captivating scent filled my mind with inappropriate and vivid fantasies. I remember thinking it wouldn't be such a bad way to go, with Candy in my arms. Candy roused me early, around 6, with a steaming mug of coffee in hand. She settled onto the bed beside me. "Thanks for last night, Dawn. I really needed that," she said, her tone soft and sincere. "Anytime, Candy." "I'm here for you," I replied. "You've already proven that." "You're up early. Are you going somewhere?" I inquired, noticing her jacket. "Yeah, I thought I'd go grab the rest of my stuff. Might as well get it over with," she explained. "Give me 5 minutes. I'll join you," I offered. Candy seemed surprised but accepted my offer of help. I wanted to be there for moral support, especially if things turned sour with Vivian. She remained quiet during the drive, an air of bitterness surrounding her. I sensed she was preparing for a confrontation. As luck would have it, Vivian wasn't home when we arrived. The packing proceeded smoothly, and we were ready to leave in under an hour. Vivian showed up just as we finished loading the last box into my old truck. "So this is it? You were going to slip away without a word?" Vivian's voice was sharp. "What's left to say? You made your choice." "Have a good life," Candy retorted, moving to stand beside me. She slid under my arm and placed her hand on my stomach, a suggestive gesture. "Let's go, Dawn. I see you wasted no time finding a replacement. I bet he's not as good as me. How's it with a stinky, hairy man? Makes me want to vomit just thinking about it," Vivian spat. "Actually, it's been better than I ever imagined. Real flesh, Viv." "Hard and throbbing," Candy countered, her hand now teasingly exploring my crotch. She gazed at me with bedroom eyes, and I felt like I might keel over from the intensity. Vivian seemed speechless, her mouth moving but no words coming out. Candy pulled me in for a passionate kiss, her tongue dancing with mine. I feared I might lose control as she broke the kiss. "Viv, do yourself a favor. Find a real man and get laid," Candy advised before turning to me. "Come on, honey, let's go." I opened the driver's door, and Candy slid in, leaving barely enough room for me to squeeze in beside her. Vivian remained silent as we drove off into the distance. As we turned the corner, we both erupted into laughter. "I'm sorry, Dawn, but I couldn't resist," she confessed between giggles. "Candy, you're wicked." "That was priceless, totally worth it," I chuckled in response. "I'm famished. Let's grab something to eat." "Sex always works up an appetite," she quipped, still laughing. By noon, we had unloaded all of Candy's belongings. It had been a hectic morning, but Candy appeared to have already moved on from Vivian. She hummed and sang as she continued to spruce up my house. Later, we enjoyed a meal and watched football on TV. Surprisingly, Candy seemed to be more into the game than I was. I hadn't pegged her as a sports enthusiast. After the game, we engaged in deep conversation, getting to know each other on a more personal level. I discovered that Candy was genuinely down to earth, far from the high-maintenance type I had assumed. I felt at ease around her, we clicked. I found myself drawn to her, not just physically. As the evening wore on, Candy yawned, signaling it was time for bed. After a shower, I crawled into bed, and Candy entered carrying her pillow. Dawn, I've been thinking. While my parents are here, we'll be sharing a bed. Would it be okay with you if we made it a habit? She inquired. There was some logic to her suggestion, but I wasn't entirely convinced it was a good idea. I felt like a lamb entering the lion's den, unsure which of us was the lion. Sure, I replied tentatively. I'll take a hot bath first. You go ahead and get some sleep, and I'll join you later, she said, skipping off to the adjoining bathroom. Sleep? Yeah, right. With that goddess in my bed, sleep was a distant fantasy. To make matters worse, she left the bathroom door open. Just 15 feet away, she bathed, her nude form enveloped in steamy water. It was torture. I tried to sleep, but it was futile. And then she slipped into bed beside me. I was ablaze with desire, but I resisted. She trusted me implicitly, but she shouldn't have. The night dragged on in a torturous limbo of temptation. I could have given in so easily, but I refrained. I wanted to, desperately, but I held back. Was she subtly offering herself to me? I was losing my mind. As you might have guessed, the entire night was a slow-burning hell. I couldn't shake the desire, the temptation. The next morning, Candy remarked how she had never slept better. I didn't have the heart to tell her that I had tossed and turned like an insomniac in a church bell tower. 5 more days like this? I wasn't sure I could endure it. The lack of sleep was taking its toll on me. Being near Candy was becoming increasingly challenging. That day, I did something I swore I'd never do. I cleaned out my garage. It was hard, dirty work, but it required little mental effort, something I was running short on. My sleepless night, spent yearning for Candy, filled my head with doubts about her feelings for me. How could she possibly be interested in someone like me? I spent the entire day cleaning and rearranging, feeling like a zombie when I finally returned to the house that evening. The aroma of cooking greeted me. Candy must have been in the kitchen. I headed straight for the bedroom, desperate for a shower. If I was lucky, I'd be asleep before Candy even realized I was home. My exhausted self stumbled into the walk-in closet and shed my clothes without another thought. I practically fell into the shower, the warm water offering a brief respite. As I dried off, I yearned for a good night's sleep. Dinner's in the oven, I heard Candy's voice. I realized too late, she was in the bathtub and had been since I arrived. It was surreal, standing there naked, stunned. How had I not noticed? Too shocked to cover myself, I stood frozen. Candy didn't seem bothered, she wasn't embarrassed in the slightest. I tried to play it cool, until I realized Don Jr. had certainly noticed Candy's figure in the tub. Another awkward situation. What was done was done. I didn't apologize. After all, she could have said something earlier or at least closed the door. Candy emerged from the water and grabbed my towel, drying herself off without a second thought. You must be exhausted. You've been at it all day. Go jump into bed, and I'll bring you something to eat, she said. I obeyed, too tired to argue, and didn't bother with clothes. We ate in bed, thankfully with Candy wearing a robe. As she cleared the plates, I couldn't help but wonder if, after just 2 days together, we had already slipped into the comfort of an old married couple, comfortable around each other, but with no intimacy. No intimacy. That's what I dreamed of when I woke up, a life without it. But there was a problem. Candy was spooned against my back, her arm draped over me. It was still dark, the alarm read 3:45. I could feel that she was in the same state of undress as me. Her arm was draped over me, and Don Jr. was reaching for her hand. I was drawn to Candy like never before. Yet, her sexual orientation left me utterly perplexed. Did she know the effect she had on me? I began to question my own intelligence. Did she truly trust me this much, or was she just being coy? Maybe it was up to me to take the first step. With all my willpower, I pushed those thoughts aside and drifted back to sleep. Little Don was awake before me, with Candy holding him firmly. When I realized what was happening, I slipped out of bed. Was it a foolish move? Perhaps. But I wanted our first intimate moment to be shared consciously. I needed both of us to understand exactly what was happening. While Candy slept, I contemplated the situation. Tonight would be the night. I would make my intentions clear, one way or another. It was Tuesday. Her parents would arrive tomorrow. She would be preoccupied with them, leaving me feeling like the fourth wheel on a tricycle. If she wasn't interested, it was better to know before they arrived. We spent nearly 2 hours at the supermarket. Candy said she needed to start preparing for our Thanksgiving feast. Pies needed baking, and she would be busy all day. I offered my assistance but stayed out of the kitchen, spending my day running errands for forgotten items. Candy had worked tirelessly in the kitchen. When she finally sat down, exhaustion was evident. I offered to massage her sore back, which she gratefully accepted. As I worked, her tension melted away. Left a little. Lower. Oh, that feels amazing, she sighed. I was about to ask what else I could do when the phone rang. Terrible timing. Candy's cell phone, and if it were mine, I would have ignored it. Who do you think ruined the moment? Candy's mom, calling to say they had managed an early flight and would be arriving later that evening. Excitedly, Candy and I spent hours trying to align our stories. How long had we been together? When was the wedding? What would our children's names be? It felt doomed from the start. I could already sense the impending divorce, and we weren't even married. We returned from the airport around 11. Everyone chatted, and I tried to navigate without making a fool of myself. Candy sat close to me, playing the part of the loving couple. Her affection drove me wild, but I kept my composure. Around 1, Candy's dad, Ben, retired to bed. I followed suit, leaving Candy and her mom, Cynthia, to talk. The timing didn't feel right to broach anything that night. This was confirmed when Candy slipped into bed wearing a flannel nightgown that screamed, "Don't touch me." Don Jr. wasn't impressed, and I let him sleep. Wednesday morning, I found Ben engrossed in an old war movie from my DVD collection. Candy and Cynthia were occupied in the kitchen, so I grabbed some coffee and headed out to wash the cars. Ever felt like something wonderful was just out of reach, slipping through your fingers? That's how I felt about figuring out Candy's feelings with her parents around. After finishing the cars, I was starving. Inside, I found Ben yelling at the TV, trying to alter history as if John Wayne could hear him. Ignoring that scene, I headed for the kitchen, hoping for a sandwich. Candy and Cynthia seemed to halt their conversation as soon as they saw me, sparking my paranoia. Candy looked embarrassed, while Cynthia's smile was ambiguous. Fortunately, Candy handed me a massive BLT sandwich, and Cynthia took one to Ben, leaving us alone. Between bites, I asked, "Are they buying it?" Candy gave me a look I couldn't decipher. "Daddy hasn't got a clue. He really likes you. He told me anyone with that many John Wayne movies is okay by him," she whispered. Just as I took another bite, Candy moved in and kissed me forcefully. I wiped the mayo from her mouth as she mouthed, "Thank you," then took a bite of my BLT. Cynthia walked in on our exchange. Trying to play it cool, I offered her my sandwich. "Want some too?" I asked, but she walked past the BLT and kissed me on the mouth. "What about Ben?" I whispered loudly. "What about him?" "He has his own sandwich, and I doubt he wants to kiss you," she laughed. The whole family seemed a bit off kilter, with me possibly the worst. Candy was nearly in stitches, and it was pretty hilarious in hindsight. The rest of the day passed without further foolishness. Ben called it a night, exhausted from his imagined adventures. I had no clue how bedtime would unfold, so I decided to go with the flow. Candy's sleepwear sent mixed signals. It wasn't the flannel nightgown, nor was she nude. It was short, lacy, but not too revealing. I rubbed her shoulders, and her response told me I was on track. Trying not to overanalyze, I continued with a friendly massage, seeing where it led. "Does that feel good?" I asked. "Really good. Please don't stop," she purred. "Let me get some lotion," I said, heading to the bathroom. When I returned, she had discarded her nightie and lay stretched out on her stomach. I warmed the lotion in my hands and began to gently massage her smooth skin. Starting with her upper back, I kneaded the muscles, eliciting groans and coos of pleasure from Candy. My fingers applied pressure along her spine, working deep into the tissue, causing her to moan with delight. As I moved down to her lower back, Candy whispered, "Oh God, yes, right there. I'm in heaven." I continued the massage, feeling her skin warm under my hands despite the lotion. She remained relaxed, even as I peeled off her panties and continued to massage her soft skin. Exploring every inch, I felt her respond with purrs of pleasure. Subtly grinding her hips, Candy allowed my hands to roam, brushing against her labia, which caused her legs to part slightly. Despite her arousal, I took my time, focusing on her legs and feet. Her toes curled as I massaged her feet, and she rolled over to watch me work. I kissed each toe as I finished one foot and moved to the other, eliciting giggles and smiles from Candy. Spending equal time on each foot, I then continued up her shins and knees. Despite my worry about measuring up to her previous experiences, I pushed those thoughts aside, determined to focus on what I wanted. After nearly an hour, with Candy's legs spread wide, I heard a deep moan and a muffled scream that didn't come from her. We both realized the source, the headboard banging against the wall in the guest bedroom. Horrified, Candy begged me to make it stop. I felt the urge to intervene somehow, but the idea of confronting her parents was quickly dismissed. Instead, responding to Candy's plea, I kissed her passionately, momentarily distracting her from the noise. As our desire intensified, we lost ourselves in each other, finding solace in the midst of the awkward situation. This wasn't the slow, passionate lovemaking I had imagined for our first time together. It was raw, primal sex, driven by desire and urgency. Her teeth sank into my neck as I delved into her wetness with my fingers, eliciting a fierce kiss from her. With a swift motion, I threw her onto the bed and shed my shorts, meeting her hungry gaze as I entered her. Our bodies collided with fervor, each thrust met with equal force. We moved in sync, attuned to each other's needs. She wrapped her legs around me tightly, her cries mingling with the screams from the next room. As we reached climax together, she tensed beneath me, her release echoing mine. In the aftermath, she cupped my face and whispered words of gratitude, acknowledging the intensity of our connection. I teased about the distraction of the noise, but she brushed it off, focusing instead on our shared moment. As I prepared breakfast, Cynthia's unexpected presence stirred a different kind of tension. Her subtle advances left me uneasy, especially considering the circumstances. Despite her attractiveness, I tried to maintain composure, serving her French toast while avoiding her suggestive comments. Her cryptic remark about Candy's vocalizations during sex caught me off guard, prompting me to jest in response. But her candid observation revealed a deeper truth. Candy's desire for me had been unmistakable, a fact I had been slow to acknowledge. Cynthia's revelation left me speechless, realizing the extent of Candy's longing and her boldness in pursuing it. I regarded her with disbelief. Seriously? I felt like I was being played. So, you're aware of everything between her and me. Am I the only one out of the loop here? What's the next move, Mom? My frustration simmered. Is that what you desire? She questioned. No, absolutely not. And where does Ben factor into all of this? Is he the audience? I snapped. Whoa, Don, you're misunderstanding. To Ben, you're his future son-in-law. He's unaware of Candy's preferences. This was all for his sake. So, you were part of this from the start? I probed, growing agitated by feeling manipulated. Cynthia seemed overly informed about our situation. No, Dawn, I wasn't. I knew about Candy's sexual orientation, but until today, I hoped she had moved past it and that you two were genuine. I'm just a concerned mother, eager for grandchildren. The odds weren't favorable. Why did she confide in you about us? I pressed. She was navigating unfamiliar emotions, uncertain about her attraction to a man. Worried you wouldn't reciprocate, Candy confided in me, sharing how positively you've impacted her. She sought maternal guidance. That still doesn't clarify why you made advances towards me. It was a straightforward assessment, Don. Maybe ill-advised, but it provided insights into your character as a man. And what did you learn? That she was correct about you, you're genuine. As I hastily prepared a new batch of French toast, Cynthia finished her meal. Reflecting on our conversation, I found myself puzzled by her actions and words. Understanding woman logic remained elusive to me. It was astonishing to realize that Candy had developed feelings for me. Despite her obvious advances, I had hesitated, fearing missteps. Now that you know this was all a setup, don't you think we might be moving too fast? I questioned. It's possible, Dawn, but sometimes when the chemistry aligns, it's like an instinctual knowing, Cynthia responded. Can I ask you one more thing? I inquired. Of course, go ahead, she replied. What would you have done if I had acted like those other guys? How far would you have taken it? I asked. That's a tricky question. You're an attractive man, so perhaps I would have, or perhaps not. One thing's certain, you'll never know for sure, she said with a wink. We embraced, the hug reminiscent of one from my mother. As Cynthia walked away, her sway seemed more pronounced than usual. She had certainly caught me off guard with her maneuvers. Knowing she held me in favorable regard, facing her formidable skills felt daunting. Candy seemed a bit annoyed when I returned. Who takes 45 minutes to make French toast? I'm not hungry now, she pouted. I placed the plate beside her. But you will be in 5 minutes, I said as I climbed between her legs and teased her with my tongue. 3 minutes and 20 seconds later. This toast is perfect, no wonder it took so long. After Candy had drifted off to sleep, I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, pondering Cynthia's words. Could love really blossom in such a short time? The question lingered until sleep finally claimed me. Had I found my answer? On Thanksgiving morning, Candy and I showered together, exploring each other's bodies as the warm water cascaded over us. Candy, I had a heart-to-heart with your mom in the kitchen last night, I began. She looked worried. Dawn, I can explain. Your mom beat you to it, I said, sensing her fear. Anxiously, she asked, what did she say? She said a lot, but what I realized last night is that we've both been keeping secrets from each other. That ends now. There's no easy way to say it, so I'll just say it. Candy, I've fallen in love with you. What? I think I have soap in my ears. Did you just say? I briefly wondered if Cynthia had been messing with me. I said, I love you, Candy, I declared, sealing my fate. I didn't have to wonder long if I'd made the right choice. Candy leaped into my arms, wrapping herself around me. Her kiss conveyed all her feelings. Breaking away, she said with tears in her eyes, and I love you too. Ben was engrossed in the TV, still trying to win World War II with John Wayne. As I poured my morning coffee, Cynthia greeted me with a smile. How are you this morning, Donald? Just fine, Mother, I replied. She chuckled, but it was odd how she called me Donald. Only my mother got away with that. Candy entered moments later, planting a kiss on me that nearly knocked me off my feet. She then hugged Cynthia and whispered something in her ear. They both smiled. I couldn't be happier, Cynthia said. The turkey is already in the oven. You two should find something to do for a few hours. Candy wasted no time, pulling me to the bedroom. We spent the next few hours in bed, enjoying a great football game on TV. The table was set for a magnificent feast. It almost seemed a shame to carve into the perfectly browned turkey, almost. Everything looked delicious, and I could hardly wait. As we enjoyed our Thanksgiving dinner, I chatted with the girls. Ben remained focused on his food, seemingly oblivious to our conversation. I suspected he was eager to get back to Fort Apache. Out of nowhere, Candy uttered, I love you, Dawn, her voice soft, and her gaze melted my heart. Then, from the depths of left field, Ben, without lifting his eyes and while still chewing on potatoes, interjected, Candy, does this mean you're not a lesbian anymore? The ensuing silence felt like a sonic boom. The women stared, mouths agape. Ben! Cynthia exclaimed, astonished. Simultaneously, Candy shouted, Daddy. Unfazed, Ben continued to eat. What? It's a valid question, he said, shrugging. The truth was out, and we were all caught off guard. I couldn't recall the last time I laughed so hard. Ben grinned at me, a mischievous glint in his eyes. Pay attention, son. You've got some learning to do if you're going to survive married life, he advised before returning to his meal. Finally, Candy and her mother saw the humor in the situation. I swore to myself that I'd remember this meal for as long as I lived, no matter how old I grew. Candy joined me in what was now our bed. Our lovemaking wasn't the impulsive act of the previous night. This time, we took our time. She touched parts of my soul I'd never explored before. With a passion I'd never felt for anyone else, I worshipped her. The noise of the headboard banging in the next room hardly registered. The next morning, as the cab arrived, we bid farewell to Ben and Cynthia. I promised Ben a fresh stack of DVDs for their Christmas visit. It had been an incredibly eventful week. I may have missed out on some of the football I'd planned to watch, but I gained an unexpected delight, a sweet tooth, one only candy could satisfy. Thanks for watching. Subscribe to the channel not to miss new videos.